And so they came to the rolling lands of Lacedaemon, deep in the hills, and drove up to the palace of illustrious Menelaus. They found him entertaining a large company of relatives in his house to celebrate the impending weddings of his son and of his lovely daughter. He was sending the princess as a bride to the son of Achilles, that breaker of the battle line, as he had promised long ago in Troy. So now, by the gods' will, the marriage was soon to take place, and Menelaus was sending her with chariot and horses to the capital of the Myrmidons, of whom her bridegroom was the king, as bride for his beloved son, the gallant Megapenthes. He was bringing Alector's daughter from Sparta. A slave had borne this son to Menelaus, for the gods had given no other child to Helen after Hermione, that lovely girl with golden Aphrodite's beauty. They were banqueting then under the high roof of the great hall, these relatives and friends of the illustrious Menelaus, in festive mood, while a minstrel in the company sang divinely to the lyre, and 2 acrobats danced in time to his tune, and whirled in and out among the guests. The 2 travellers, brave Telemachus and Nestor's noble son, brought their chariot to a halt at the courtyard gate. The Lord Eteoneus, energetic squire of the great Menelaus, came out and saw them there, and set off at once through the palace to inform the king. He stood near him and said urgently, "Menelaus, favourite of Zeus, we have some strangers here at the gates, men whom I take by their looks to be of divine descent. Tell me whether we should unharness their horses for them, or send them on to find someone else to entertain them." Auburn-haired Menelaus answered him indignantly, "Eteoneus, son of Boethus, you have not always been a fool, but at the moment you are talking nonsense like a child. You and I enjoyed much hospitality from strangers before we reached our homes, and could expect that Zeus might grant us a life without suffering in time to come. Unyoke their horses at once, and bring our visitors to join us at the feast." Eteoneus ran off through the hall, shouting to his assistants to hurry up and follow him. They led the sweating horses from under the yoke and tied them up at the mangers in the stable, throwing down beside them a feed of grain mixed with white barley. Then they tilted the chariot against the burnished wall by the gate, and ushered the newcomers into the royal buildings. Telemachus and his friend opened their eyes in wonder at all they saw as they passed through the king's palace. It seemed to them that this lofty hall of illustrious Menelaus was lit by something of the sun's or the moon's splendour. When they had feasted their eyes on the sight, they went and bathed in polished baths, and after the maids had washed them, because again they don't seem to be able to do it themselves, rubbed them with oil, and dressed them in thick cloaks and tunics. I was going to say eunuchs. And dressed them in thick cloaks and tunics. They took their places on chairs at the side of noble Menelaus, son of Atreus. A maid came with water in a beautiful golden ewer, and poured it out over a silver basin for them to rinse their hands. I mean, they'd just had a bath. She then drew a polished table to their side, and the faithful housekeeper brought some bread and set it by them with a choice of delicacies, helping them liberally to all she could offer. Meanwhile, a carver served them with plates of various meats he had selected from his board, and put gold cups beside them. Auburn-haired Menelaus now greeted them, saying, "Welcome. Do begin your meal. After you've dined, we shall inquire who you may be. Your lineage has left a stamp upon your looks. You are the sons of kings, those sceptred favourites of Zeus, for inferior parents could not breed such men as you." Okay, that's a bit shitty. As he spoke, with his own hands he passed them the rich, piece of roast that had been given him as the portion of honour, and they helped themselves to the good things spread before them. When they had satisfied their appetite and thirst, Telemachus spoke to Nestor's son, leaning close so that the rest might not hear him. "Look round this echoing hall, son of Nestor, friend of my heart. You've known him a day. The whole place gleams with bronze and gold, amber and silver, and ivory. What an amazing quantity of treasures! The court of Zeus on Olympus must be like this inside. The sight fills me with awe." Auburn-haired Menelaus caught what he was saying and spoke words that flew. "No mortal can compete with Zeus, dear boys. This house and all his possessions are everlasting. No, his house. His house and all his possessions are everlasting. But when it comes to men, I feel that few or none can rival me in wealth, for it took me 7 years and great hardship to amass this fortune and bring it home in my ships. My travels took me to Cyprus, to Phoenicia, and to Egypt. Ethiopians, Sidonians, Arembrians, I visited them all, and I saw Libya too, where the lambs grow horns almost immediately, and they use lamb 3 times in the course of the year, when nobody from king to shepherd need go without cheese or meat, or fresh milk either, since the ewes provide milk all the year round. But while I was wandering in those parts, making my fortune, an enemy of our house struck down my unsuspecting brother, caught up his guard through the treachery of his accursed wife. So it gives me little pleasure to call myself the lord of all this wealth, since, as you might have heard from your fathers, whoever they may be, I have had much sorrow in my life, and have already lost one lovely dwelling full of precious things. How happy I could be here in my house, with even 1/3 of my former estate, if those friends of mine were still alive who died long ago on the broad plains of Troy, so far from Argos, where the horses graze. Neighbours are existing again. How dare they? And yet, though I miss them all and often grieve for them as I sit here in our halls, till sorrow finds relief in tears, and the tears cease to fall, for mourning is bleak and one soon tires of it, I do not mourn for that whole company, disconsolate as I am, so much as for one man among them, whose loss, when I brood over it, makes sleep and eating hateful to me. For of all the Achaeans who strove at Troy, it was Odysseus it was Odysseus who strove the hardest and achieved the most. Yet all that labour was to end in misery for him, and somebody has come through my gate. And in a haunting sense of loss for me, so long has he been gone, leaving us in ignorance of whether he is dead or not, though I suppose his people are already mourning for him as dead. The old man Laertes, loyal Penelope, and Telemachus, whom he left a newborn baby in his home. Menelaus' words stirred in Telemachus an overwhelming desire to weep, and when he heard about his father, he let the tears roll down his cheeks to the ground, and with both hands held up his purple cloak in front of his eyes. Menelaus recognized him, and deliberated for a while within himself whether to wait for the young man to mention his father, or to put searching questions to him straight away. In the midst of his perplexity, Helen came down from her lofty, perfumed room, looking like Artemis with her golden distaff. Adreste drew up for her an elegant chair. Alcippe brought a rug of the softest wool, and Philo carried her silver work basket, a gift from Alcandre, wife of Polybus, who lived in Egyptian Thebes, where the houses are furnished in more sumptuous style than anywhere else in the world. This man had given Menelaus 2 silver baths, a pair of 3-legged cauldrons, and 10 talents in gold. In addition, his wife gave Helen beautiful gifts for herself, including a golden spindle and a basket that ran on wheels that were made of silver furnished with a rim of gold. This was the basket that her lady, Philo, brought in and put beside her. It was full of fine-spun yarn, and the spindle with its dark wool was laid across it. Helen sat down on the chair with a footstool for her feet, and at once asked her husband about everything. "Menelaus, favourite of heaven, have we been told the names of these men who have come to our house? Shall I withhold the truth or speak the truth?" "I feel that I must speak, for never in man or woman have I seen such likeness before. I am lost in admiration. Surely this must be the great-hearted Odysseus' son Telemachus, whom his father left as a newborn baby in his home, when you Achaeans came to Troy with war in your hearts for my sake. Shameless creature that I was." "Lady," replied the auburn-haired Menelaus, "you point out a resemblance I can see too. Odysseus' feet were just the same, and so were his hands. The movement of his eyes, the shape of his head, and the way his hair grew. Only a moment ago, when I was talking of Odysseus as I remembered him, and saying how much he had done and suffered for my sake, the tears came streaming down his cheeks, and he covered his face with his purple cloak." Nestor's son Pisistratus now said, "Menelaus, son of Atreus, favourite of heaven, leader of your people, you are right in supposing that my friend here is Odysseus' son, but he is modest, and on a first visit like this, he is too bashful to speak uninvited in front of you, whose conversation gives us as much pleasure as we would get from listening to a god. So Nestor of Gerania sent me with him for escort, as Telemachus was anxious to see you, in case you might help with advice or suggest some line of action. For a son, when his father is gone, has many difficulties to cope with at home, especially if there is nobody to help him, as is the case with Telemachus, whose father is abroad, and who has no other friends at home to protect him from injustice." "Who would have thought it?" exclaimed the auburn-haired Menelaus. "He was indeed a well-loved friend, the friend who undertook all those heroic tasks for my sake. And now his son has come to my house. I had meant to favour him above all others of our race when he came back. If an all-seeing Zeus had allowed the two of us to bring our good ship safely home across the sea, I'd have built him a house and transplanted him from Ithaca with all his possessions, and his son and his people too. Yes, I'd have emptied one of the towns round here in my own dominions and given him a town in Argos to live in. We would have lived in the same country and met continually. Nor could anything have intervened to spoil our pleasure in each other's company, till the darkness of death had swallowed us up. But a jealous god must have thought otherwise, and so ensured that that unhappy man was the only one who never reached his home." Did he really want to leave Ithaca, though? Because there he's king, and with you he wouldn't be? Menelaus' words stirred in them all a longing for tears. Helen of Argos, child of Zeus, was she? Broke down and wept. Telemachus and Menelaus, son of Atreus, did the same. Nor could Nestor's son keep his eyes dry when he thought of his brother, the handsome Antilochus, whom the splendid son of the bright dawn had killed. Remembering him, he turned to Menelaus now. "Menelaus, son of Atreus," he said, "whenever we talked of you at home and asked one another about you, Nestor, my old father, used to always speak of you as the wisest of men. Please be persuaded now by me, and contain your grief if you possibly can. Since I, for one, take no delight in weeping as I dine, and besides it's almost dawn. Not that I think it is wrong to shed a tear for any man who meets his fate and dies. Indeed, what other tribute can one pay to poor mortality then a lock of hair from the head, and a tear on the cheek. I have my own dead too, a brother, not by any means the worst soldier in the Argive camp. You must have met Antilochus, though I never knew him myself, nor even saw him. They say he excelled above all others, a superb runner and a great fighter. My friend, replied the auburn-haired Menelaus, in saying all you said just now you spoke and acted with discretion of a much older man. You talk such good sense. You're the true son of your father. Good breeding cannot be hidden when a man's father has himself been blessed by Zeus at his birth and at his marriage like Nestor. He was lucky from first to last throughout all his life, and is now serenely aging in his home, with sons about him who combine good spearmanship and intelligence. Well, let us forget the tearful mood that we have fallen into, and turn our thoughts once more to supper, when they have poured some water on our hands. In the morning Telemachus and I shall have many important matters to discuss with each other. As Spalion, one of noble Menelaus's busy squires, poured water on their hands, and they helped themselves to good food that was spread before them. Helen, meanwhile, the child of Zeus, had had an idea. Wait, if Helen is a daughter of Zeus, that means that Aphrodite basically pimped her own sister out to Paris, which is horrific. Okay, where was I? Child of Zeus. Had an idea. Abuse? Not child abuse. Child of Zeus. Oh. Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Well, that's staying in. Into the bowl in which their wine was mixed, she slipped a drug. What? That had... No, fuck you, Helen. Stop drugging people. That's a roofie. Into the bowl in which their wine was mixed, she slipped a drug that had the power of robbing grief and anger of their sting and banishing all painful memories. Fucking ecstasy. No one that swallowed this dissolved in wine could shed a single tear that day, even for the death of his mother and father, or if they put his brother or his own son to the sword. What the fuck? And he were there to see it done. It was one of many drugs which had been given to the daughter of Zeus by an Egyptian woman, Polydamna, the wife of Thon. The fertile soil of Egypt is very rich in herbs, many of which are beneficial in solution, though many are poisonous. And in medical knowledge, Egyptians are supreme among men. They are true sons of Paeon, the healer. She's just out here fucking roofying everybody, my god. When Helen had dropped the drug into the wine and seen that their cups were filled, she turned to the company once more and said, Menelaus, son of Atreus, favourite of the gods, and my young and noble guests, each of us has his good times, and each his bad times. Zeus in his omnipotence sees to that. Then let us sit at dinner in this hall and enjoy ourselves, listening to each other's stories. I have just the one for the occasion. It is, of course, beyond me to describe or even number all the daring feats of dauntless Odysseus, but here is one marvellous exploit which he had the nerve to conceive and carry through in Troy when you Achaeans were hard pressed. He disfigured himself with appalling lacerations, and then, with dirty rags on his back, looking like a slave, he slunk into the broad streets of the enemy city. Disguised as a beggar, he looked utterly different from the Odysseus of the camp by the ship. He made his way, like this, into the Trojan city, and was not detected by anyone. I was the only one who penetrated his disguise, but whenever I questioned him, he was clever enough to evade me. However, when I bathed and anointed him, gave him some clothes to wear, and solemnly swore that I would not disclose his name to the Trojans before he returned to the huts by the ships, he gave me the full details of the Achaeans' plans. And after killing a number of Trojans with his long sword, he got back to the Argive camp with a great deal of information, The other women of Troy were loud in their lamentations, but I rejoiced, for I was already longing to go home again. I had suffered a change of heart, repenting the blindness which Aphrodite sent me when she brought me to Troy from my own dear country, and made me forsake my daughter, my bridal chamber, and a husband who lacked nothing in intelligence and looks. "My dear," said the auburn-haired Menelaus, "your tale was well and truly told. I have wandered far in this world. I have looked into many hearts and heard the counsels of the great. But never have I set eyes on a man of such endurance as the indomitable Odysseus. What he did inside the wooden horse is another example of the man's steadfastness and iron resolution. We sat in it, with the pick of the Argive army, waiting to bring havoc and slaughter to the Trojans. When you came up, prompted, I can only suppose, by some god who wished to give victory to Troy, for Prince Deiphobus came with you. 3 times you circled round our hollow lair, feeling the outside with your hands, and you called out the name of all the Argive captains in turn, altering your voice to mimic each man's wife. Diomedes and I, who were sitting right in the middle with the good Odysseus, heard you calling and were both tempted to jump up and come out or give an instant answer from within, but Odysseus held us back and checked our impetuosity. The rest of the warriors stayed absolutely still, though Anticlus still wanted to give you some reply, but Odysseus clapped his great hands relentlessly on the man's mouth, and so saved the whole army, holding him tight till Pallas Athene had induced you to go away. Here the thoughtful Telemachus addressed the king. "Menelaus, son of Atreus, favourite of the gods, leader of the people, it only makes things worse to think that such qualities as these could not shield Odysseus from disaster. Even a heart of iron could not have saved him. But come, let us retire for the night and find pleasure in sweet sleep." At this, Helen of Argos instructed her maids to put 2 bedsteads in the portico, and to lay fine purple fleeces upon them, and spread rugs over these, and some thick coverlets on top. Torch in hand, the maid went out to the hall and made the beds, to which a squire then conducted the guests. And so the heroic Telemachus and Nestor's royal son spent the night in the forecourt of the palace, while Menelaus slept in his room at the back of the high buildings, and the lady Helen of the long robes lay by his side. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, Menelaus of the loud war-cry rose from his bed and put on his clothes. He slung a sharp sword from his shoulder, bound a fine pair of sandals on his glistening feet, and strode from his bedroom looking like a god. He went to Telemachus and, with a word of greeting, took a seat beside him. "Telemachus," he asked, "what brought you over the wide seas to our pleasant land of Lacedaemon? Was it public business or private affairs? Tell me the truth." "Menelaus, son of Atreus, favourite of the gods, leader of your people," the thoughtful Telemachus replied. "I came to find out whether you could give me any news of my father. I am eaten out of house and home, my rich estate has gone to ruin, and my palace is packed with a set of implacable enemies who spend their days in the wholesale of slaughter of my jostling sheep and shambling cattle with their twisted horns, and in competing for my mother's hand in all their brutal pride. I am here to plead with you in the hope that you will tell me the truth about my father's unhappy end. If by any chance you witnessed it yourself, or heard the story from some other wanderer like him, for if ever a man was born to suffer, it was he, do not soften your account out of pity or concern for my feelings, but faithfully describe the scene that met your eyes. I beseech you, if ever my good father Odysseus, in the hard years of war at Troy, gave you his word and kept it, remember what he did, and tell me all you know." Auburn-haired Menelaus was hot with indignation. "How disgraceful!" he cried. "So the cowards want to creep into the brave man's bed, It's just as if a deer had put her 2 little unweaned fawns to sleep in a mighty lion's den, and gone to range the high ridges and the grassy dales for pasture. Back comes the lion to his lair, and the fawns meet a grisly end, as will the suitors at Odysseus' hand. Once, in the pleasant isle of Lesbos, I saw him stand up to Philomelides in a wrestling match, and bring him down with a mighty throw, which delighted all the Achaeans. By Father Zeus, Athene, and Apollo, that's the Odysseus I should like to see these suitors meet. A swift death and a sorry wedding there would be for all. But to answer your appeal, the questions you asked me, I have no wish to deceive you or to put you off with evasive answers. On the contrary, I shall pass on to you without concealment or reserve every word that I heard myself from the infallible lips of the old man of the sea. It happened in Egypt. I had been anxious for some time to get home, but the gods delayed me there, for I had omitted to make them the correct offerings, and they never allow one to forget their commandments. There is an island called Pharos in the rolling sea off the mouth of the Nile, a day's sailing for a ship with a roaring wind astern. In this island is a sheltered cove where sailors put in to draw their water from a well, and afterwards launch their trim ships into the deep sea. It was here that the gods kept me for 20 days, and all that time there was never a sign of the offshore breezes that speed ships out and into the open sea. All our supplies would have disappeared, and the men's strength been exhausted, if one of the gods had not taken pity on me. It was Odyssey, the daughter of the mighty Proteus, the old man of the sea, who came to my rescue. The sight of me touched her heart deeply when she met me walking by myself away from my men, whom the pangs of hunger scatter every day round the coast to angle with barbed hooks for fish. She approached me and said, "Sir, are you an utter fool? Are you completely stupid? Or have you simply given up and enjoy suffering so much that you allow yourself to be imprisoned all this time in the island and can find no means of escape, though your men are growing weaker by the day?" To which I replied, "I do not know what goddess you may be, but I assure you that I have no wish to linger here. I must have offended the immortals who live in the wide heavens. You gods know everything. So tell me, which of you is it that has confined me here and cut my voyage short? And tell me also how I can return home across the teeming seas." The fair goddess answered me at once, "Sir, I will tell you all you need to know. This island is the haunt of that immortal seer, Proteus of Egypt, the old man of the sea, who owes allegiance to Poseidon, and knows the depth of all the seas. He is my father too, so people say. If you could contrive somehow to lie in wait and catch him, he would tell you about your journey, and the distances to be covered, and direct you home across the teeming seas. Not only that, favourite of Zeus, he will tell you, if you want to know, all that has happened in your palace, good and bad, while you have been away on your long, weary travels." "Will you," I replied, "suggest a way by which we can waylay this ancient god? I am afraid that he might see me first, or hear of my plans in advance, and keep away. A god is not easily defeated by a mortal." "I will tell you the plan in detail," she replied. "When the sun has climbed to its highest point, the sage old sea god emerges from his native salt, hidden by the dark ripples stirred by the west wind. Once out, he makes for his sleeping place, in the shelter of a cave, and the seals, the children of the sea nymphs, heave themselves up from the grey surf and go to sleep in herds around him." So, Achilles was part seal? Exhaling the pungent smell of the sea salt depths, pick 3 men from your crew with care, the best you have on board, and at daybreak I will lead you to the spot. and find you each a place to lie in. But I must tell you how the old sorcerer proceeds. First he will go his round and count the seals. Then, when he has counted them and seen that all are there, he will lie down among them, like a shepherd with his flocks of sheep. Directly you see him settled, summon all your strength and courage and hold him down, however hard he strains and struggles to escape. He will try all kinds of transformations and change himself into every sort of beast on earth, and into water and blazing fire, but hold him fast and grip him all the tighter. And when he speaks at last and asks you questions in his natural shape, just as he was when you saw him lie down to rest, relax your pressure, let the old man go, and ask him which god is making difficulties for you, and how to reach your home along the teeming seaways. After giving me this advice, she disappeared into the billowing waves, and I went to where my ships were resting on the sand. My heart was dark and troubled. When I had reached the sea and found my ship, we prepared our supper. The solemn night descended on us, and we lay down to sleep at the water's edge. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, I set out, with many prayers to heaven, along the shore of the far-flung sea, accompanied by the 3 men from my cruise, whom I could most rely on in any emergency. Odysseus had vanished under the wide waters of the sea, but now she returned, carrying the skins of 4 seals, all freshly flayed. As part of the plan to deceive her father, she scooped out layers for us in the sandy beach, and sat down to await our arrival. When we came up to her, she ensconced us in our places and covered each man with a skin. Our vigil might have been insupportable, because the vile smell of the fish-fed seals was peculiarly trying. Who would choose a monster of the deep for bedfellow? However, the goddess herself thought of a miraculous remedy and came to our rescue with some ambrosia, which she applied to each man's nostrils. It was sweet-smelling stuff, and killed the stench of the seals. So there we waited patiently right through the morning. Then multitudes of seals came up from the sea and lay down in rows along the beach to sleep. At midday the old man himself emerged, found his sleek seals already there, and went the rounds to make his count. Entirely unsuspicious of the fraud, he included us as the first 4 in his flock. Then he too lay down to sleep. With a shout we charged and grabbed hold of him, but the old man's skill and cunning had not deserted him. He began by turning into a bearded lion, and then into a snake, and after that a panther and a giant bear. He changed into running water too, and a great tree in leaf. But we set our teeth and clung on grimly. When at last the old man, who knew so many tricks, grew weary, he broke into speech and began asking questions. "Tell me now, Menelaus," he said, "which of the gods conspired with you to waylay and capture me, and why did you need to do it?" "Old man," I answered, "why are you prevaricating? You know as well as I do how long I have been a prisoner on this island, unable to escape, and growing weaker every day. So tell me now, in your divine omniscience, which god is it that has confined me here and interrupted my journey? And tell me also how I can reach my home across the teeming sea." "Before embarking," said the old man in reply, "you should have offered rich sacrifice to Zeus and all the other gods, if you wished to get home fast across the wine-dark sea. It is not your fate to reach your own country and see your friends and fine house again until you have sailed the heaven-fed waters of the Nile once more and made ceremonial offerings to the everlasting gods who live in the broad sky. When that is done, the gods will let you start this voyage that you have set your heart on." Now, when I heard him tell me to make the long and weary trip over the misty seas to Egypt once again, my heart sank. Nevertheless, I found my voice and made this reply. "Old man, I shall do exactly what you advise, but there is something else I wish you to tell me. Did all of my countrymen, whom Nestor and I left behind when we sailed from Troy, reach home in safety with their ships, or were there any who came to grief in some accident at sea, or died in their friends' arms though the fighting was over? Son of Atreus, he replied, why do you question me on these matters? You have no need to know, or to probe my understanding. I warn you that your tears will flow soon enough when you have listened to my tale. For many were killed, though many too were spared. Yet only 2 of the commanders of your armies lost their lives when homeward bound. I need not speak of the fighting, since you took part in that yourself, but there is a third who, though still alive, is a prisoner somewhere in the vastness of the seas. Ajax, to take him first, was wrecked in his long-oared ships by Poseidon, who drove him onto the great cliff of Gyrae, and then rescued him from the surf. In fact, he would have evaded his doom, in spite of Athene's enmity, if in his blind folly he had not talked so arrogantly, boasting that he had escaped from the hungry jaws of the sea in defiance of the gods. His loud-voiced blasphemy came to the ears of Poseidon, who seized his trident in his powerful hands, struck the Gyraean rock and split it in 2. One half stood firm, but the fragment he had severed, where Ajax had been resting when the blind impulse took him, crashed into the sea and carried him with it into the vast and rolling depths, where he drank the salt water and drowned. That would be Ajax, son of Telamon. But your brother, Agamemnon, contrived somehow to circumvent his fate, and slipped away in his great ships with the goddess Hera's help. Yet when he had nearly reached the heights of Cape Malea, a hurricane caught him, and with heavy groans he found himself driven over the teeming seas towards the borders of the land where Thyestes, in the old days, and now his son Aegisthus, had their home. But in due course there came the chance of a safe return even from there. The gods turned the winds round, and home they came. Agamemnon set foot on the land of his fathers with a happy heart, and as he touched it, kissed his native earth. The warm tears rolled down his cheeks. He was so glad to see his country again. But his arrival was observed by a spy in a watchtower, whom the cunning Aegisthus had posted there with the promise of 2 talents of gold for his services. This man had been on the lookout for a year, in case the king should land unannounced, slip by, and himself launch an attack. He went straight to the palace and informed the usurper. Then Aegisthus devised a clever trap. He selected 20 of the best soldiers from the town, left them in ambush in one part of the palace, and, after ordering a banquet to be prepared in another part, set out in a chariot to bring the king home, with his heart full of ugly thoughts. Agamemnon, never guessing that he was going to his doom, came up with him from the coast, and Aegisthus feasted him, then killed him, as a man might fell an ox at its manger. Not a single one of the king's following was left, nor of Aegisthus' company either. They were killed in the palace to a man. This was his story, and it broke my heart. I sat down on the sands and wept. I had no further use for life, no wish to see the sunshine any more. But when I had had enough of tears and writhing on the sands, the old sea prophet spoke to me again. Menelaus, he said, you have wept too long. Enough of this incontinent grief, which gains us nothing. Better make every effort to get back to your own land as quickly as you can. For either you will find Aegisthus still alive, or Orestes will have forestalled you by killing him, and you may be in time for the funeral feast. At these words, in spite of my distress, my heart and spirits were cheered. You have accounted for 2, I said, but who is the third? The one who is still alive but a prisoner somewhere in the vastness of the seas? Or is he dead by now? I wish to hear whatever sorrow it may cause me. The third, said Proteus, is Odysseus, Laertes' son. whose home is in Ithaca. I caught a glimpse of him on an island in the nymph Calypso's home, with tears streaming down his cheeks. She keeps him captive there, for without a ship and crew to carry him so far across the sea, it is impossible for him to reach his home. And now, Menelaus, favourite of Zeus, hear your own destiny. It is not your fate to die in Argos, where the horses graze. Instead, the immortals will send you to the Elysian fields at the world's end to join auburn-haired, that's a long name, Rhadamanthus. Okay, to join auburn-haired Rhadamanthus in the land where living is made easy for mankind, where no snow falls, no strong winds blow, and there is never any rain. But day after day, the west wind's tuneful breeze comes in from the ocean to refresh its people. This is because you are the husband of Helen, and in the eyes of the gods, son-in-law to Zeus. The old man finished and sank into the heaving waters of the sea, while I went off towards the ships with my heroic comrades, my heart in turmoil. When I had reached the sea and found my ship, we prepared our supper. The solemn night descended on us, and we lay down to sleep on the surf-beaten shore. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, we first of all ran our fleet down into the good salt water and put the masts and sails on board our trim ships. The crews then climbed in, found their places at the oars, and struck the grey surf rhythmically with their blades. And so I returned to the heaven-fed waters of the Nile, where I moored, made the proper ritual offerings, and, after appeasing the deathless gods, built a mound of earth so that the glory of Agamemnon would last forever. When all this was done, I set out for home, and the immortals sent me a favourable wind and brought me quickly back to my own beloved land. And now, my friend, do stay in my palace. Stay for 12 days or so, and then I'll send you off in style. You shall have glorious gifts from me, 3 horses and a splendid chariot. I'll give you a lovely cup as well, to remind you of me all your life when you make drink offerings to the immortal gods. Son of Atreus, the thoughtful Telemachus replied, do not keep me here on a lengthy visit. It is true that your tales and talks so delight me that I could easily stop with you for a year and never feel homesick for Ithaca or my parents. But my friends must already be tired of waiting for me in sacred Pylos, and now you prolong my stay. As for the gift you offer me, please make it a keepsake I can carry. Horses I will not take to Ithaca. I'd rather leave them here to grace your own stables. For your kingdom is a broad plain where clover and galingale grow in plenty, with wheat and rye and broad-eared white barley, whereas in Ithaca there is no room for horses to run, nor any meadows at all. It is a pasture land for goats, and more attractive to my eyes than the sort of land where horses thrive. None of the islands that slope down to the sea is rich in meadows or suitable for chariots, Ithaca least of all. These remarks made that is the second time I've done that. These remarks made Menelaus of the loud war cry smile. He patted Telemachus with his hand and replied, I like the way you talk, dear boy. One can see that you have the right blood in your veins. Very well, I will change my gift. It is easily done. You shall have the loveliest and most precious of the treasures that my palace holds. I'll give you a mixing bowl of wrought metal. It is solid silver with a rim of gold round the top, and was made by Hephaestus himself. I had it from Phaedimus, the heroic king of Sidon, when I stayed at his palace on my journey home. That is the present I should like you to take. During their talk, the guests began to arrive at the great king's palace. They drove up their own sheep and brought heart-warming wine. Their bread was sent in for them by their elegantly dressed wives. This was how they prepared for their banquet in Menelaus's hall. In front of Odysseus's palace, the suitors, in their usual high and mighty way, were once again amusing themselves with throwing the discus and the javelin on the levelled ground. Antinous and the handsome Eurymachus, the boldest spirits in the gang and its acknowledged leaders, were sitting by when Phroneus' son Noemon came up to them with a question for Antinous. "Have we any idea," he asked him, "when Telemachus comes back from sandy Pylos, or don't we know? He has gone off with my ship, and I happen to need it, to cross over to Elis, where the fields are big and I keep 12 brood mares, with their sturdy mules, not yet weaned or broken in. I want to drive one off and train him." His news filled them with consternation, for they had no idea that Telemachus had gone to Pylos, but thought he was somewhere in the neighbourhood on the farm, among the flocks perhaps, or with the swineherd. Antinous, Eupeithes' son, turned to him and said, "I want the truth. When did he leave, and what young men went with him? Did he take men from the town, or did he make up a crew from his own serfs and servants, as he easily might? And tell me this too, so that I can be quite clear. Did he use force and go off with your ship against your wishes, or did you give it willingly when he asked?" "I gave it to him," said Noemon, "of my own accord. What would anyone do when asked a favour by a man of his standing with so much trouble on his mind? It would be very hard to refuse him. As for the young men who went with him, they're the best in the land next to ourselves. For captain they had Mentor. I saw him embark. Him or some god. Anyhow, it looked exactly like him, and that's what puzzles me. I did wonder whether that was going to happen. I saw the good Mentor here only yesterday at dawn, yet he certainly boarded my ship for Pylos that night." With this, Noemon went back to his father's house, leaving the two proud lords appalled and furious. They made the rest leave their games and sit down together, while Antinous, Eupeithes' son, held forth and gave vent to his fury. His heart was seething with black passion, and his eyes were like points of flame. "Damnation take it," he cried. "What a coup Telemachus has had the audacity to bring off. This expedition that we swore would come to nothing. With all of us against him, the young puppy calmly sets out, after picking the best man in the place and getting them to launch a ship for him. He is going to give us still more trouble. I hope Zeus clips his wings before he reaches manhood. However, give me a fast ship and a crew of 20, and I'll lie up for him in the straits between Ithaca and the bluffs of Samos, and catch him on his way. And a grim ending there'll be to this sea trip of his in search of his father." The others welcomed the scheme and told him to carry it out. They then got up and moved off to the palace. Before long, Penelope heard about the plot that her suitors were hatching. It was Medon, the herald, who let her know. For while they were working out the plot in the courtyard, he had been eavesdropping outside, and heard all they said. He set off straight away through the palace to tell Penelope. Immediately he crossed the threshold of a room, she said, "Herald, what errand have the young lords given you? Is it to tell King Odysseus' maids to drop their work and prepare them a feast? Oh, how I hate their pursuit of me, and the way they swarm around. They'd never feast here again if I could stop them. Yes, the whole gang of you that come here day by day, fleecing us of our livelihood, my prudent son's inheritance. I suppose you never listened years ago when you were children, and your fathers told you how Odysseus treated them. Never a harsh word, never an injustice to a single person in the land. How different from the usual run of kings, favouring one man, persecuting the next. Whereas Odysseus never wronged a soul. Which only serves to show you and your shameful behaviour up, and proves how easily past kindness is forgotten." "My queen," replied the fair-minded Medon, "I only wish that this were the worst of your troubles. Your suitors are planning a far greater and more shocking crime. Zeus grant that they may not succeed. They are all set now on assassinating Telemachus with their sharp swords as he comes home. He has gone to holy Pylos and Lacedaemon to seek news of his father. When Penelope heard this, her knees trembled and her heart grew faint. For a long time she found it impossible to speak, her eyes filled with tears. The words stuck in her throat. At length she managed to say, "Tell me, Harold, why has my son gone?" There was no call whatever for him to venture on these fast ships that sailors use like chariots, to drive across the wide seas. Does he wish his very name to be forgotten in the world? The astute Medon replied, "I do not know whether some god urged him on, or his own feelings suggested this journey to Pylos, but his purpose was to find out about his father's return, or to learn what end he met." Medon went off through the palace. Penelope was overwhelmed by the anguish that racked her. She could not even bear to sit on one of the many chairs in her apartments, but sank down on the threshold of her lovely room, weeping bitterly, while all the maids of her household, young and old, stood round her sobbing. "Listen, my friends," she said between her sobs. "Is there a woman of my time whom Zeus has treated worse than me? I had a husband years ago, the best and bravest of the Danaans, a lion-hearted man, famous from Hellas to the heart of Argos. That husband I have lost, and now the whirlwinds have snatched my darling son from the house without a word. I was not even told that he had gone, not even by you, who must have known it well enough. How cruel of you all not to have thought of rousing me from my bed when he went to his hollow black ship. And I've lost my place, for had I known that he had this journey in mind, I swear he would have stayed, however determined to go, or left me dead at home. Cut the apron strings, love, he's 20. But hurry, one of you, and call my old servant, Dolius, whom my father gave me when I came here, and who looks after my orchard now. He shall go straight to Laertes, sit down beside him, and tell him the whole story. Perhaps Laertes may hit upon some scheme and come out of his retreat to appeal to the people, who seem intent on wiping out his and Odysseus's royal line." "Dear lady," said Euryclea, the fond old nurse, "whether you kill me with the cruel knife or let me live on in the palace, I cannot hold my tongue. I knew the whole thing. It was I who gave him bread and wine and all he asked for. But he made me solemnly promise not to tell you for a dozen days, or till you missed him yourself, and found that he had started. He didn't want the tears to spoil your lovely cheeks. Come, go and wash and put on some fresh clothes. Then go to your room upstairs with your waiting women and pray to Athene, daughter of Zeus. She may still save him, even from the jaws of death. And don't trouble an old man who has troubles enough already. I cannot believe that the happy gods detest Arceisius's line. Someone surely will survive to own these lofty halls and the fertile fields beyond." In this way Euryclea hushed Penelope's sobs and cleared her eyes of tears. So the Queen Penelope, when she had washed and changed her clothes, went to her room upstairs with the waiting woman, filled a basket with sacrificial grains, and prayed to Athene. "Hear me, Aratone, unwearied one, daughter of Zeus who bears the Aegis. If ever Odysseus in his wisdom burnt the fat thighs of a heifer or sheep to honour you in his palace, remember his offerings now. Save my dear son for me, and guard him from harm at the hands of these brutal suitors." At the end of her prayer she uttered a great cry. The goddess heard her petition, but in the shadowy hall the suitors broke into uproar. One of the callous youths called out, "It sounds as if our much-courted queen is going to give us a wedding. Little does she know that her son's death has been arranged." This was their boastful way, though it was they who little guessed what had really been arranged. Antinous, however, rose up and silenced them. "Are you mad?" he cried. "None of this boasting, or somebody may go inside and tell. Keep your mouths shut now and disperse. You know the plan we all agreed on. Let's carry it out." Without further ado, he picked the 20 best men, and they left for their ship and the seashore, where they began by running the black vessel down into the deep water, then put the mast and sail on board, fixed the oars in their leather slings, all shipshape, and spread the white sail out. Meanwhile their eager squires had brought down their armour, they moored the boat well out in the water and came on shore, where they had their supper and waited for evening to fall. Wise Penelope lay there in her upper room, without touching food or drink, wondering whether her innocent son would escape death or fall a victim to her brutal suitors. Doubts and fears chased through her mind as they do through a lion's when he finds himself surrounded by the beaters, and stands in terror as they stealthily close in. But at last a comforting sense of drowsiness overcame her. She sank back. She fell asleep, and all her limbs relaxed. Athene of the flashing eyes now had another idea. King Icarius had another daughter besides Penelope, called Iphitheme, who married Eumelus and lived in Phaerae. The goddess made a phantom now, exactly like this woman, and sent it to Odysseus' palace to save the unhappy and weeping queen from more distress and further floods of tears. It entered her bedroom by the strap that worked the bolt, and stood by her head and spoke to her. "Are you asleep, Penelope, worn out with grief? I do assure you that the gods, who live in such easy lives themselves, do not mean you to be so distressed. For it is settled that your son shall come home safe. The boy has done no wrong in their eyes." "Sister, what brings you here?" Penelope replied out of her sweet sleep at the gate of dreams. "We are not used to seeing you with us, living as you do so far away. You tell me to forget my sorrows and all these anxieties that give my mind and heart no rest from pain. As though I had not married and then lost the best and bravest of our race, my noble lion-hearted husband, famous from Hellas to the heart of Argos, and now my beloved son, for whom I grieve even more than for his father, has sailed away in a great ship, a child like him, untrained for action or debate. Cut the apron strings. I tremble for him when I think what they may do to him, where he has gone or what may happen to him on the sea. He has so many enemies plotting against him, and thirsting for his blood before he reaches home. Be brave, and conquer these wild fears," said the shadowy wraith in reply. "He has gone with such escort as any man might pray to have beside him, Pallas Athene in all her power, and it is she who, in pity for your grief, has sent me here to bring this message to you." "If you really are divine," the wise Penelope said in reply, "and have heard the voice of a god, tell me about his unfortunate father too. Is he alive somewhere? Can he still see the sunshine? Or is he dead by now and down in Hades' halls?" "Of Odysseus, whether alive or dead," said the shadowy wraith, "I will not give you any news yet. It does no good to utter empty words." With that it slipped past the bolt, by the door post, and into the breath of the wind. But Icarius' daughter, waking with a start, drew a warm sense of comfort from the vividness of this dream that had flown to her in the dark of night. Meanwhile her suitors had embarked and were sailing the high seas with murder for Telemachus in their hearts. Out in the open strait, midway between Ithaca and the rugged coast of Samos, lies the rocky isle of Asteris, which, small as it is, can offer ships a harbour with 2 entrances. It was here that the Achaean lords set their ambush for Telemachus.